Monopolistic competition is the topic of today's lecture. In a way, you could say that this is a contradiction, because on the one hand, we're talking about a monopoly, and on the other hand, we're talking about competition, conflicting terms, so to speak. But the best way to look at the implication of this type of market is to think that you have many producers, therefore a lot of competition, and each one of those would like to make themselves different, to differentiate themselves to the point where they would be considered like a monopoly. So monopolistic competition means that although you have many producers, you're going to try and make your particular product or your particular firm one that people are going to follow, even if you are going to be changing your price substantially. As such, there are several characteristics on the same basis as we have used them before. Number one, we have many producers. Number two, it is easy to enter and exit. Obviously, if there are many, then it must have been easy to enter. And it is a differentiated product as opposed to a homogeneous product. A lot of effort is going to be put into making that particular product very different. And the advertising is going to be done mainly on a local level. The reason for that is because these firms do not have enough money to advertise nationally. So it's going to be in your local paper. It would be like your drugstore, your grocery store, that are competing on price and are sending you the information about what sale items they have for that particular week. So examples of a monopolistically competitive firm would be small businesses. These are the businesses that would generate or would receive proprietors' income, if you remember from the different sorts of income: wages and salaries, rent, interest, profit, and the fifth one would be proprietors' income, or income that goes to small businesses. A convenience store would be an example of a monopolistically competitive market. And on what basis do you think that this convenience store is going to differentiate itself from the other convenience stores? Basically, it is going to be on location. Let's say that all you need is some milk. You're driving back from school and you're thinking about stopping at the convenience store, because if you stop at a regular grocery store, then milk is at the very, very end aisle, and so you have to walk through the whole store and probably pick up more stuff than just the milk that you wanted. So which one of the convenience stores would you stop at? Probably the one that is on the right-hand side of the street that you are taking to go home. You don't want to make any detours. You don't want to stop on the opposite side and then have to cross the street. That's the most convenient location. The manufacturing of apparel or clothing is another example of monopolistically competitive. So now, we are going to distinguish between the individual firm, and that would be the individual producer, and the market demand. So this is the market demand. In other words, this is everybody who would like to buy that particular product, let's say toothpaste. And this is the demand curve faced by one individual, small business. Since they do have some power over pricing, your demand curve is going to be downward sloping, but it is going to be flatter than the market demand, because actually you have only a very small share of the overall market. But the minute that your demand is downward sloping, and it's also your average revenue, your marginal revenue is going to be steeper. And that should remind you the shape of the monopoly demand curve, except that the monopoly demand curve would be identical to the market, since they are the only producers, and the demand curve would be a steeper line. What is the goal of a monopolistically competitive producer? Just like in the other types of markets, they would like to maximize profits. And where do we maximize profits? Just like we did before, we looked at maximum profit at the point where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. Remember, this is the most important thing for you to remember from microeconomics. So if we look at this particular firm right here, the individual demand curve for a monopolistically competitive firm, we will see that MC and MR cross right here. And so this is going to be the quantity that will maximize your profit. How much are you going to charge? Well, you're going to be charging according to the demand curve. So you go all the way up. This is your demand curve, and this is the price. So if this is $10 and this is, let's say, 6 units, then what you see is that in order for your firm to get the highest amount of total profit, they should produce 6 units, and they will be charging $10. So what will be the total revenue? $60. Because 6 times 10, they're getting $10 for every one of the 6 pieces that they are selling. Now, the next thing is to calculate economic profit, and that would be the difference between, again, average revenue and average total cost. That's your average total cost of 6 units. As you can see, it is below your demand, and therefore, if this is 8, then you are going to have a profit per unit here of $2, and therefore a total profit of 2 times 6 or 12. That is going to be your economic profit. So pretty much the same thing as a monopoly, except that these lines are going to be flatter than they were under a monopoly. So what happens when there are economic profits and it is easy to enter the market? Well, more producers are going to be coming in, and as they come in, then the supply curve, as they come in, the supply curve is going to be increasing, and as the supply increases, what happens to price? Price is going to be dropping. As price drops, you have lower profit. So in the long run, you are going to be experiencing only normal profits. And in order to, so long run equilibrium equal to normal profit only. So in order to show that right here, to show no economic profits, average total cost and average revenue have to be tangent, have to just meet, and at all the other points, at all the other quantities, you would be losing money. Now, you also have to have the intersection of marginal cost and marginal revenue at that same point to make sense, because that's your best bet, and your best bet is just normal profits. At a quantity higher than that, you lose money because your average total cost is higher than your average revenue. At a quantity less than that, again, you're losing money because average total cost is higher than your average revenue. So that would be your best bet. And remember, the reason why this is going to happen is because it is easy to enter the market. So we could also compare our monopolistically competitive firm with that of pure competition. And we will see that there are several similarities, but there are also very important differences. So if we were to look at the main similarity, if I say, for instance, this is a market that has many producers, which type of market comes to mind? Well, it could either be monopolistically competitive or purely competitive. So this is where they have a common situation. If I say that this is a market that is easy to enter, again, it could be either monopolistic competition or pure competition. The main distinction here would be one is more difficult to enter than the other. Okay, so monopolistically competitive would be a little bit more difficult, but still it is relatively easy to enter. Now, the main difference between the two markets is the fact that one has a product that is homogeneous or undifferentiated, and the other one has a product that is homogeneous. So one is identical, like agriculture, and pure competition, a tomato is a tomato. Well, we have different brands of tomatoes, but within that particular brand, you cannot distinguish what farm these tomatoes were grown on, and therefore it is a homogeneous product. While monopolistically competitive, we want to make sure that this product is as different from the other one as possible. And sometimes that difference is going to be implied through advertising. If you are convinced that that particular product is going to improve your appearance, even if it does not, but because you were told so many times that this particular blade, usually we use females as those that are trying to improve their looks, but let's look at men and razors that are used for shaving. Okay, well, if you believe that because of that particular blade, which shaves much more closely than another brand, you are going to be looking more attractive. You might walk around and feel better and indeed become more attractive because of your self-confidence. So, you know, we're trying to give examples from both men and women so that you don't feel discriminated, that we never mention that you also are trying to, are going to be influenced by advertising. Now, there is another thing that is important when we're looking at the difference between pure competition and monopolistic competition, and that would be the position on the average total cost curve. So in order to reach the lowest point on your average total cost curve, your demand curve has to be horizontal, because the minute that your demand curve is downward sloping, even though you are not making economic profits, you are not producing at as low a cost as you possibly could. So here, for instance, if you're looking at monopolistic competition, then this is where you would be, this would be the cost at which you would be producing. If it is a monopoly, then it's even steeper, and it would be at an even higher point on your average total cost curve. So similarities and differences. When you think of a small business, you're going to be thinking about monopolistic competition. Those firms are trying to make themselves as different as possible, and once they have convinced you that they are very different, then they can hike up the price, have more power over price, because you will feel that the other competitors, the other razor blades, are not as important. You will have ease of entry because these firms are small, and it's also going to be easy to leave the industry. Now, what would make it difficult to leave the industry if you had invested a lot of money in setting up that firm? The other situation would be that in the short run, you are going to experience economic profits, and in the long run, those profits are going to be competed away. Competition, other producers are going to be coming in, and as a result, supply increases, price drops. Very much so like under the pure competition model, where you looked at the long run equilibrium. So that's about it for monopolistic competition. We will continue next time with oligopoly. Thank you.